Hey, my name's Paul Manning. I'm an undercover police officer. I infiltrated the Mafia and the Hells Angels at the same time. Wrote a book about it, 1078, and I'm chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Paul.
How's it going?
What's up, Paul? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the sun. You?
I'm pretty cold up here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But you're originally from Canada, right?
Originally from England. I'm British.
England.
I'm English. Yeah.
So we're going to get into how all this transpired for you. You have a crazy story.
It's pretty insane. Yeah.
Where were you born and raised?
So, just a small town called Accrington, just outside of Manchester, north of England.
And what was your early life like?
That's pretty rough. It's a poor town. A lot of opportunities to do the wrong thing, and I chose not to, or I chose to a few times, and then I chose to join the army. I was working the doors by the time I was 16 as security, and then I just decided that there's only two paths. If I stay in that little town, I'm going to go to jail, like a lot of my friends did that I work with. So I joined the army at 18 and joined the military police.
And when did you go over to Canada? And are you able, when you live in London, or England, are you able to just go to Canada?
No, it's pretty much like the US. Excuse me, I'm kicking a chest infection. It's pretty much like the US. There's an application form. There's medical tests. There's everything. There's everything you'd expect anyway for a legal move. I went from the military police. I went into covert operations. Worked on the covert operations team for the special investigation branch, and then from there I joined the Metropolitan Police. I did some undercover work there, but mostly uniform. I got promoted pretty quickly to sergeant, and an opportunity came up to move over to Canada. I looked at a few police services in Canada, much better standard of living compared to the UK. A lot cheaper at the time, now not so much. And it just seemed like a reasonable move. And then we found ourselves in a position where the police services that I'd chosen weren't really for me. We weren't a good fit. Toronto were particularly very professional service, but there was something said during the interview that made me go, you know what, we're going to have problems in the future. It's not worth it. So the wife had just got on with Sussex Constabulary down in the south of England, and there was a decision made that we'd stay in the UK. And then a police service called Hamilton reached out and said, listen, we've got a project. You've worked undercover before, police officer. We won't mind you coming in and seeing if you can shut down a couple of problem premises. And that's where it all started.
And how old were you at this time? What year was it?
So it was 2005. God, you're asking me to do math. 32?
Did you?
32, yeah, because I got promoted to sergeant at 30 in the Met.
So now your first undercover operation, well, not your first, you did some before, but this is a major operation, right?
It didn't start out that way. It was sold to me. There were a couple of problem premises. There was a crack house called the Sandbar, which was a real shithole. It was disgusting. And then there was another facility called Up in Smoke, and it was an establishment where people went in and smoked weed, which at the time was frowned upon, and now it's completely illegal. And we looking back, we just wasted our time for God knows how many years trying to deal with that. Both were pretty easy infiltrations, but I had a lot of experience going in there. I was part of a UC team for almost 3 years where all we did was undercover work and surveillance. So that was pretty easy. That portion of it was pretty easy. We got in within days. And then it went to, because we did so well, we started hitting the bangers and the local dealers and all crack purchases. And we never got refused. And it was all cold calls. It was me picking up the phone, calling somebody and saying, "Listen, can you sort me out?" And they come out, they meet me, and we buy off them. So we probably got, in the first 2 weeks, we probably got maybe 40 people on 300 offences.
Just free stuff, right?
Just low level. We call it test purchase in the UK. It's where there's no long-term infiltration, but test purchase and long-term infiltration, the two very different skills. You can do both. However, test purchase is probably the most dangerous because there's no planning or preparation. You don't know how quickly it's going to turn. And some people are switched on. They'll figure you for a cop straight away, and they'll tell you where to go. And if you try and argue the point, then they'll hurt you. They'll try and hurt you. So the test purchase portion of it, I was surprised how easily it was. And I've got to be honest, probably played a lot on the accent. I don't sound Canadian in the slightest, for instance. No. So it worked out pretty well. They weren't buy bus though. So we had to start identifying these people that we were buying off. Because if you buy a bus, you've got to disclose that I'm an undercover police officer, and that would have ended everything. So when we got to a stage where we were making so many purchases that we were falling behind on the paperwork, and there was a team just for paperwork, there was a suggestion made that I go and infiltrate this particular community, the Mafia down on an area called James Street North, which is a Portuguese-Italian community, large Portuguese-Italian community. And I went, sure, why not? Bring it on.
Did you know about these people before you got involved?
I'd seen Donnie Brasco, and I've watched Goodfellas, but you can't prepare yourself for the reality of it. I mean, you've been around, you know. You see portrayals of certain people on TV, and then when you actually get to the reality of it, it's completely different. There are some similarities, but I've got to be honest, it was mostly the rules they follow. I think most movies have got that particular part of it right, but there's no honour among some of these guys. There's a lot of betrayal.
They talk behind each other's backs, and
they do, and they also say things that like they tell me certain people are informants. Don't say anything to such and such, but he's an informant, and I know for a fact he's not, because I know. But it's done to elicit you working with them and not working with anyone else, especially with the work we were doing. We were making a lot of money, so this operation effectively paid for itself. We spent very little taxpayers' money. I was everywhere and into everything.
So how does this begin? Like, they tell you to go infiltrate this mafia family, and so how does it all start?
I've got to be honest, it was an unprofessional shit show from the start. It was very badly done. I think it was done on the cuff, but I don't think this police service was particularly big enough to do an operation like this successfully anyway. And they ended up bringing in the provincial police, which is like the state police. And then it got slightly better. I was hoping to bring on the ICMP, because then not only do you have the money, the federal money, you've got a dedicated cover teams and other bits and pieces. They give me very little. They told me there's a mafia presence. They told me the type of offences they're into. They asked me not to read any material, like the books that have been written on those particular families, and I abided by that. And then I went in clean because I had no preconception of what these people are or what they do or who they are. So any information that we gleaned and we put on paper, well, one, it was A1 because it came from an undercover police officer, but two, it could be corroborated by other intelligence that I wasn't aware of. And that for me was probably one of the only smart moves of the project, because there was no contamination of intelligence. There was no, I didn't go in with a preconceived idea that this guy deals drugs, I'm going to buy drugs off him.
Yeah. So do they tell you walk into this bar and start getting friendly with them?
They because they've seen the work I did with Up in Smoke and the Sandbar, and all the cold calls we did. Cold calls are really difficult. If you get 1 out of 10, you're lucky. We never got refused. Every single person served us drugs. With this, I did demand pictures and some intelligence reports, simply the fact that I started to get suspicious now that perhaps they didn't have the ability for this kind of operation. So what I did was I demanded some some intelligence reports, and photographs and names and the like. And then I spent maybe 12 hours trolling through these pictures, just picture by picture by picture, not looking at the faces or the hair or the hairline, but just the eyes, just the eyes, just the eyes. And then I went out and I went from bar to bar to bar, and I ended up in a place called Pescara's. And Pescara's was like an Italian eatery. And I go in and I order a coffee, and straight away the guy that comes and serves the coffee, I recognize him straight away. From the eyes, just he stood out. We chatted. I played a bit. Then I was looking for an apartment, but I didn't say to him, "I'm looking for an apartment." I sat there with a paper and circled and went on the phone and fuck, no more. Yeah. And he reached out to me and said, "You looking for a place?" I said, "Yeah." But then he started hitting me with questions, and I'm like, "You know what? It's nothing to do with you. I'm good, thanks. I don't need a place off you." And then he came back with a number, and that's how we got into that particular building. They had 4 apartments above, and I rented one of those. But when I got back, I'm going to say he introduced himself as James. No, he introduced himself as Louis. Definitely a rounder. Definitely somebody who can look after himself, and I can look after myself. But this guy just a category higher. And Lou, I sat there for probably another 6 hours going through all the photographs again, and I finally got him. And his name was actually James Lewis Malone. So I went through the J's first, and he didn't pop up, and that's when I went to just go through everything. And his name was James Lewis Malone, and he was a prospect with the Hells Angels at the time. He got patched about, I want to say about 3 months later, he got his full patch. And he was a nightmare.
What do you mean?
He was the one the president was scared of. He was the one that it ended up, Lou got kicked out after about a year, and we had plainclothes officers. I had nothing to do with this part of the operation. We had plainclothes officers shuttling a car, 2 up. So there's 2 males in the car, and the plainclothes officers following the car, and it's going to the clubhouse, the Hells Angels clubhouse. So they pull it before the clubhouse, and they find 12 ounces of coke in it or something like that. But the bikers are in, and they come out and they start to cause running interference. But they're only doing it verbally. But Lou comes out, and Lou's toasted. He's wasted. He was a big cokehead. He was a big drinker. He's wasted, and he starts shoving police officers, and the cops don't want to arrest him because there's 12 bikers there. It turns into an issue, and what's the shove at the end of the day? You know, if that's the best you've got. But in his excitement, trying to run interference for these 2 guys that they've already arrested for the 12 ounces, he turned around and shoved the president of the Hells Angels, and they booted him the next day. Gone.
He shoved the president. Why would he shove the president?
He was wasted. He was agitated. He was coked up. The president told him to calm down, and he turned around and shoved the president 2 hands to the chest, and that was it. He was done. And then about a week later, he went round to where the president worked, because all these guys work. All the Hells Angels work, believe it or not. They've all got jobs.
Yeah.
They're all workers. They're not shy of work. But he went round to the president's workplace and threatened him. Said, "You owe me money. I want the money." And we think he paid up. Lou was a different character.
So where does it go from there? You're at this bar. You meet this guy. He's a little. Does he make you uneasy when you're around him?
No, not at all. I mean, I got on well with Lou, but we think Lou was the one that corrupt police officers told that I was a police officer. Lou was pretty reasonable to get on with. They liked you or hated you, but he was in a position where I'd done deals with him, and if I'd just done a deal with him and he committed a criminal offence, and then somebody else come up and wanted to talk to him about something, he'd literally turn around to you and say, "You need to fuck off now," because it was none of your business. Even though he trusted you and he dealt drugs to you and he knew you were on his side, he just didn't take any risks. And there was a lot of, especially the wise guys, a lot of the wise guys were like that. A lot of the wise guys really knew this stuff. Their operational procedure, when it comes to breaking the law, was pretty good. It's one of the best I've seen.
when you're around this guy Lou, you said another cop told him that you were an undercover agent.
Wait.